It doesn't need to be said that COVID 19 took the world by storm. The total cases worldwide have crossed 12 million, and more than 500,000 people have lost their lives. In the fight against COVID 19, not only have we seen lockdowns and other preventive measures being taken by nations, but also political accusations being flung around. Hello, everyone. So, the topic for today is analyzing the COVID 19 response of the world. And today we have with us Dr. S.S. Lal. Dr. Lal is a renowned public health expert with a career spanning across 25 years, and he's occupied several important portfolios in his career. He's assisted the World Health Organization's technical assistance in East Timor for tuberculosis and HIV. And he was also the National Professional Officer for the public-private mix in tuberculosis in India. And now, very interestingly, he's been appointed as the All India Professional Congress head, the president of Kerala in India, which makes for an interesting political strategy, but we'll get to that part a bit later. So let's start the interview. The first question being, when will this COVID-19 phase end? Because we're all very anxious for this phase to end.
Yeah, so this is a new disease, and we are still working along with the disease and trying to understand the organism as well as the disease epidemiology. So any prediction can go wrong. So there are different predictions based on different projections. So these are based on different assumptions. Because it's a new disease, we have experienced this disease only for 6 months. So these projections are based on different modelings. But the overall conclusion is that this disease will be there at least until the end of 2021, next year.
2021.
There will be different waves, different patterns, and especially in different countries. So now it's a pandemic. It's there everywhere in all countries. But the pattern is not the same in all countries. So the pattern in future also could be slightly different in different countries. So we have to expect this disease to be there for at least another 18 months, which means end of next year. And these projections are based on the assumption that we will have a vaccine maybe towards the end of this year or maybe in the beginning of next year, and we will have some medicines that can cure the disease. So these are based on assumptions of a potential vaccine and potential medicines.
So to an extent, do we have to learn how to live with COVID-19?
I would say, see, that's a fact. I will not say live with COVID, live away from COVID. That I should say like that. The thing is, see, there are wild animals. You don't go into the forest and get attacked by them, or you stay away from the places where they are likely to come out. So there are snakes. We don't live with them. We live away from them. So like that, there are measures to live away from the virus, but virus is a reality like you have snakes or wild animals.
Oh, so as long as we take the correct measures, we can run our economies and go on with our daily tasks. That's possible.
Yeah. There are preventive measures. Like, for example, if you wear a mask, likelihood of spreading the disease to another person is less. And the chance of you getting the disease also reduces. If you wear a mask, and if you keep social distance, that takes care of both of you, you and others. That's what I meant. And so these kind of measures are there, and so you have to avoid going to crowded places. You have to basically practice personal hygiene in all respect, which we did not have as a population. I'm talking about Indians. We did not have that kind of practice everywhere. Of course, in some cities or some developed places we had that, but as a population in general, we did not have those habits. So by practicing all these things, we will be able to control the disease to a great extent. That's what's happening. So this has not affected all parts of the world equally. There are some places that are better off.
Yeah, so a collective social response is necessary to contain this pandemic. So coming to the next question, how have we fared really? Can you draw a comparison how different countries have handled this situation?
I told you the course of the epidemic was different in different countries. Of course, some countries in Western Europe were affected severely, and of course, US and Brazil, these countries are affected severely. These things are there, but still, everywhere it's not the same. The basic thing we have to remember is that countries are different. Countries are different means people are different. The nature is different. Some countries are thickly populated. Some countries are not that thickly populated. Some countries have a lot of older generation, older people, and some countries are were connected to China and other places that had the disease. So different countries behave, and the behavior of people are also different. It's not the way Indians behave is differently from what Europeans or Americans behave. And health systems are also different. The capacities of the health systems, the efficiency of the health system, and how much rich your country, that is another factor. If you are a poor country, the likelihood of having severe side effects of the disease could be more. So all kinds of, so there is actually, countries are not comparable, except some countries in the European region. Countries are not very comparable. Yeah, of course there are common factors or commonalities, but you cannot just have a general comparison. So you have to ask about a particular country, or if you think two countries are similar and the situation is different in these two countries, then we have to. My question is, see, I have seen people even comparing Kerala and New York, which is it's an absurd comparison.
I see. So coming to those healthcare systems, quite ironically, when you take countries like the US and UK that are supposedly developed, their responses have been rather subpar. So what would you say about that?
See, these countries, developed countries, their health systems are very good. The similarities between these two countries are the standards of healthcare is very high. See,
but then their responses have been criticized.
That's what the thing is. See, we never expected, or these countries, the whole world never expected such a big pandemic sweeping the entire world. So there, see, what did we need? We wanted to test kits for huge populations for the whole country, which whether either UK or US did not have, because it's a new disease, and the people were falling sick, and small part, at least 4 to 5% of the patients were needing intensive care admission, and it's only 4 or 5% when you say in terms of percentage, but when you convert to absolute number, it's huge in thousands and hundreds of thousands. And we did not have this kind of mechanisms, intensive care units or ventilators, this kind of, see, all these countries, developed world, they had all these equipments for a situation they could have anticipated. But such large numbers of patients, they never anticipated. So no country anticipated. And of course, there were other reasons like political reasons also. And see, the success of a country depends on whether you are completely aligned to science or public health experts. The more you go away from such scientific advice and information, you are likely to have a steep fall. That's what happened in the US also. They had some time. Actually, initially they were in a shock because they realized
were they too lax? Especially the UK, it was the Boris Johnson government was criticized that they were too lax initially.
Yeah. So see, next time they will not be lax. That's what I'm trying to say. Last at least 100 years for the current generation, nobody in this current generation, except 1 or 2 people who are living 100+, others have not experienced such a situation. So what were the epidemics in the past, whether it is SARS or MERS, these were limited to a few countries, maybe 20, 25 countries. So they did not expect such a fast. So, and plus they did not listen to the scientific world. So they tried to take political decisions for a pandemic, in which they failed. But they,
so is it a lesson learned?
Sorry?
Is it a lesson learned to pay next time?
Lesson learned by the whole world. There are countries which are not learning from lessons because all countries don't have the same capacity at the political level as well as scientific level. So such countries are going to suffer again.
Fine. So what is the ideal healthcare system to respond to such epidemics and pandemics in the future?
So basically, there is no ideal health system existing in any part of the world. So each health system has its own strength as well as its own weakness. The country where you live, you have social insurance and all. So you don't have to spend money from your pocket when you are sick, but you are paying huge taxes. And at the same time, the system is very slow. That's what I have experienced when I lived in Europe. You go with a suspected fracture, you may wait for another 5-6 hours before you are checked by a doctor. That was my experience in some European. Or you should be carried in an ambulance. Whereas in India, with all these limitations and constraints, your casualty patient will be seen in a minute or so. Where the quality of care can be very different. And in the US, in the US, it is private, entirely it is private, without insurance. Yeah. Right. In the US, you need insurance, otherwise you don't get anything. There is no government as such. So all systems have their own strengths as well as weakness. So it depends on the context. See, in the context of COVID, I would say Indian systems work better than other systems, not because of the quality of the healthcare system, but because of the accessibility of poor people to the health system. And poor people, at least on paper, they have free access. So when they don't get free access, they can raise voice and somebody will be there to bring you access, even though it is very, it varies in kind of the levels in different parts of the country. But you cannot think of a free system in the US. Or in UK, you cannot have free treatment unless you are paying your own taxes and things like that. But in India, a very rich person can get free access to free care in the biggest government hospital of India.
So it's a complex problem.
It's a complex problem. So it depends on what you are dealing with. So there you cannot say which is the best healthcare system. System-wise, India has a good system, but it doesn't work. In the US and UK, it works, but it's not easily accessible.
Fine. So it's a trade-off kind of a situation, accessibility and quality.
Yeah.
So coming to India, how do you feel? How has India handled the situation? Because the numbers are surprisingly good. Like for a population of say 1.3 billion, the cases have been around 500,000. So on paper, that seems good.
You cannot be happy about that. See, for example, when the disease started spreading in the US, and when the people or government realized that they have to be serious, by that time there was already community spread in the country, in the US and all. So it was spreading very fast. And why this happened? Because you look at any airport in India, like whether it is New York or Washington DC or whether it is Washington State, hundreds of flights come from different parts of the world every day. Every second there is a flight in New York. New York State itself has different aircraft. So we were actually importing a lot of cases in the US from these affected countries, including Western Europe, China and Western Europe.
Yeah.
India's situation was different. Not many people go to China from India. Not many people come to India compared to these countries.
But then don't we have a large diaspora outside, especially the non-residential Indian community?
Yeah, that's what. Initial spread was from China and Europe to US, but India was not affected that much to begin with. So India had a lot of time, but we did not use that time wisely. Especially even on my Facebook and my media, I had people like me. Many of us had to really literally fight, because in the initial days when Western Europe and US countries and China, of course, those countries were suffering, even the central ministers of India, they were talking about cow dung bath and drinking cow's urine. So that we wasted a lot of time. We lost our scientific temper in the last few years, and it is very difficult to convince Indians about science. It has become very difficult, especially the villages. And the present government has worsened the situation. They were talking about when America was running for test kits and vaccines and medicines, India was running for cow dung and cow's urine, which we wasted a lot of time. Now
So
see,
you're reiterating your party president Rahul Gandhi's stance that India should have implemented restrictions early on.
no doubt about it. We should have done good preparations. We should have learned from other countries. We should have done good homework. We wasted time. We were trying to play politics. We were trying to use religion, bring religion also into this disease, using cow and other things. So we wasted time. And even now we don't have a plan. What's the country's plan? See, maybe they have a plan, but states don't have. States are working in their own ways. And there are, see, in the US also, the whole country got this test kits, and initially it was through insurance, people had to pay. Now it became free after some time. So those kind of things happened in the US. But what is the national strategy?
Regarding the states, some responses have been actually praised, in fact, even worldwide, when you look at the Kerala model or even the Bhilwara model in Rajasthan, where the Congress is ruling.
Yeah.
So
there are good models everywhere. Even China, they did very well. The moment they realized there is an infection spreading, they did a good job. Of course, it went to other countries. And similarly, India also, other countries are also there. Like, look at Taiwan, look at Singapore, look at Korea. These countries had their own past experience with SARS and all. So Kerala, of course, Kerala has a good model. It's not for just COVID alone, whether it is Nipah or whether it is malaria. When I was a medical student, more than 30 years ago, I never had the chance of seeing a malaria patient, because malaria was not there in Kerala. But when you go to North India, it was full of malaria. So Kerala is very different. Kerala people are literate. Why Kerala is different? Because it is Kerala. Even if you have,
it's not a communist success, as some news outlets.
It's not communist success or contest success, nothing like that. It's because it's Kerala. It's Kerala people's success.
Fine.
See, even communism worked because it is Kerala. Because people have to read communism. People are literate. So literacy did not come through communism. People are literate to read communist book or whatever. So, communists also contributed. I cannot say that communists did not. See, all the parties that rule, even smaller parties also contributed to the development, because Kerala, even a smaller party, is accountable. Nobody can just escape like that. So all parties, communists have their own share of contribution. It's not just because of, see, only thing is that this COVID came when communism was ruling. That was not communist gain or virus gain. It's so
coincidence.
Had it happened during Congress rule also, the system would have happened, because doctors are the same, nurses are the same, health workers are the same, people are the same. So, and
how about the health ministry, the health minister?
The health minister, she did a good job. That's what I'm saying. So she did a good job. She's among all the other ministers of the current ministry. I would rank her as number one among all the ministers. She is very good. That's a good thing. What I'm trying to say is, had it been another ministry also, the minister would have performed almost at the same level, because it's not the minister who is going and treating the patients or tracing the contacts or doing the lab test. It's only leadership. Kerala, whether you are Congress or communist, generally we have very good leaders. We have very good leaders, and we have central ministers, several central ministers from Kerala, from the Congress party also, and reputed ministers, efficient ministers. We have a lot. And even now we have people like Shashi Tharoor. He's not a communist. He doesn't belong to the government, but he's doing as much as any individual or any parliament member can. Even communist parties are praising Shashi Tharoor, which means it's not communist success or contest success. It's a success of the people. It's a success of the government. Government's a continuous system. Only the ministers change, but the administration remains there, and the people remain there. All government institutions remain there, irrespective of the party. I wouldn't take away any credit from the present government. I would give them due share of credit, but I will not give any undue share to any party, or even if it was Congress that was wrong. No doubt about that.
Okay, that's a very valid point. And so there are questions regarding testing that people are saying that India needs to increase its testing. But then the ICMR has said that out of 24 people they've tested, 23 have turned out negative. So there's no need to expand testing as such. So what would you say on that?
So there is no general rule for testing. Testing is based on how the epidemic is going, and based on test positivity rate and all. So if the test positivity is too high, also you have to suspect because you are doing selective testing. You are testing only those people who are very likely to be
Yes, sir. This time the negatives have been more,
So
according
it depends on, yeah, so it varies from state to state also. Depending on the number of cases, the positivity, all those things, and how the epidemic grows. Based on that, you have to increase or decrease the number of tests. That states and country has to decide. There is no general rule. Based on, that's what I said. It's not based on your population or density of population. It may have its own impact on that, but it depends on how the epidemic is growing and the test positive.
So, based on your observation, what would you say, at least on a national average level, that should India increase testing?
I don't have the figures up today, but I will never say that no, India will be doing a wrong thing. Of course, there will be political interest to hide the numbers. That happens everywhere. So I'm sure that is happening in India also. No doubt about that. Everyone wants to see that will happen in China. That will happen in the US, every other country. So, but at the same time, there are scientific forces, scientific people. Politicians cannot completely curtail the activities of the health departments and scientific world. So I say that's my assumption. I don't have the current numbers of today, but overall, my feeling is that they are doing a good job.
Okay, that's very nice. And should we spend more in primary healthcare? That's been a criticism for many years, that we're not spending.
That is there, especially a country like India. So we have primary healthcare mechanisms, but it is not functional.
Yeah, there's a shortage that we say.
Some countries like Kerala, some states like Kerala, it is working very well. Kerala also had a very bad past when it was not working. I have worked in a primary health center some 25 years ago. I did not have even paracetamol in that primary health center. So we had a very bad past, but we have improved a lot. And basically primary health system has to improve. We don't even have the primary doctor system or family doctor system. If you have a headache in India, you can directly go to the All India Institute of Medical Science, which is the premier institute of India, instead of going to a primary doctor. So that has to be strong. It's not strong because we are not investing properly. I have seen primary health centers in northern parts of India that has health centers that opens, or doctor comes once in a month or never comes, and whoever is there in that hospital, they manage. So there are hospitals like that. So if you don't invest in a primary healthcare of the government, people may go to private sector where you cannot guarantee the quality and even quality of the doctors, as well as whether they are qualified or not. See, yesterday I read somewhere 2 out of 3 doctors in India are not qualified to treat. So they are the so-called quacks or untrained or informal providers. So this is a reality. So if you don't strengthen your public health primary care system, people will have no choice. They may go to poorly managed private sector and get suboptimal care, or they will have to go to good private hospitals where they will have to pay from their own pockets.
Exorbitant amount of money.
Yeah,
it's rather ironic, wouldn't you say, that we're talking about the problems with the primary healthcare systems, but at the same time, India is projected to be a booming center of medical tourism. So it's rather ironic.
Tourism. That the answer to that question is there already in your question itself. See, there are places like tourist places, like if you see big places like Goa or in the South Kovalam or Cochin, whatever places. See, the poorest person in that area, maybe people living 2 miles from these places, they don't have access to these tourist places. So the common man, the majority of the people are poor and they don't have these kind of resources. So India has very good hospitals that only very rich people can afford to go there and have treatment, or people from outside. Just like
there's such a disparity that exists.
Yeah. There will be people living 10 kilometers away from Taj Mahal who have not gone inside the Taj Mahal.
I see. Yeah. So overall, how would you, at least, what would you recommend India to do? India to do in the coming months, because they haven't peaked as of now, and they're easing the restrictions. Could that be dangerous?
I wouldn't give any advice as an individual. So what I would say is that we have to listen to what World Health Organization is saying, what the technical organizations are saying, what the scientific bodies are saying, like ICMR and their research institutes, what the scientific world is saying, scientists are saying, and there should be consensus. There should be in another discussion I was saying that India is politically ruled by a party and some parties are in the opposition. But now the whole world, the world is ruled by virus. The entire population is on the opposition. So that's how you have to consider things in any part of the world. India has to work together. What I have seen in India as well as in Kerala is that the ruling parties are dominating, which is natural, but they are keeping the opposition parties away from everything. They are not allowing them to participate. Partnership is not, there is no master-servant relation in partnership. Partnership means everyone is equal, which I don't see at the central level or state level in our country. Many states. Yeah, so this has to be a real partnership. Forget about all other differences, whether it is religion or caste or party. You have to work together. When you are, see, when it is floods, when you have big floods, you forget everything. You help irrespective of caste. You go in a boat and help everyone. You forget every difference. People are Muslims were saved by and allowed to live in what do you call Sikh temples or whatever, or churches. Christians were living in temples, Hindu temples, when floods happened. But this is not happening when I'm talking about the flood in Kerala or some other states. But this is not happening in a bigger crisis like COVID. People are trying to gain political points, political gains through this. Whether why using this opportunity as an opportunity to gain your popularity as well as fail the opposing party, which is very sad. Irrespective of political parties, this is very sad.
But then the center has actually accused the opposition of playing petty politics, especially the migrant crisis. What they said is that, especially Nirmala Sitharaman, that they were just doing making a what do you call it, a stunt. It was just a political stunt. They weren't focused on actually solving the migrant crisis or issues. They actually they stopped these migrants and actually asked them questions, but they themselves did not help them. So what would you say on that?
And national level, India did a lot of blunders. The thing is, initially we were reluctant. We were hesitant to take this as a serious problem. I heard people saying that this is not a big issue. And even I saw a video recently. I remember that video when it happened also. The Lok Sabha speaker was asking the MPs to remove the mask. So a lot of things happened. Maybe he was not aware of the usefulness of mask. And people were praying and people were doing puja. That's fine. But we should have resorted to scientific mechanisms. And central ministers were advocating for treatment with cow's urine. So these things went wrong. And declaring, I have complaints about declaring the way they declared lockdown also. People should have been given some 4-5 days to go back to their own places. When it is suddenly declared, that's why people had to walk thousands of kilometers. People had to go walk through the rails and the roads, and they were hit by trains, and people died just like rats die.
Regarding that, there was a lot of miscommunication between the state and the center. The center had issued supposedly Sharmic trains, but the states did not seem to inform the people, and the people did not know those trains were arriving, and they started talking.
We have a federal system. We have states have a lot of authorities on different things. But when if it's a war, does any state have a separate opinion? It's the country decides, national level, they decide what to do. And all states are expected to behave. They will not say, UP do your own war, Kerala do your own, nothing like that. This is more than a war. So government should have taken over. Taking over means they have to invest money. They did not invest money. So they were forced to. You don't need just advice. Of course, advice we need, but they have invested. See, the way I would say Trump has done better job in the US. Even my sons, they got money in their bank accounts.
Well, you would say that Trump has done a better job, even though
in terms of taking a national leadership. Whether it is what he did is right or wrong, that's a different thing. In India, you don't feel that national government is taking the lead. That's what I'm trying to say. Somebody from Kerala or Tamil Nadu or Uttar Pradesh feel that I belong to the same country. The country is the China issue, border issue. Kerala cannot have say that, no, let China do like that, even though we have communists there. Or Uttar Pradesh cannot say that I'll send some army to China. No, it's central government that's doing. It's worse than the border situation. The entire country has been affected. The central government should have done everything. They should have taken over the scenario, the entire control. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, and you would say the states, at least the Congress-ruled states, have cooperated fully.
See,
Is that
I don't want to do the postmortem of each and every state. States should have done. See, all BJP governments are not equally good or equally bad, and all Congress governments may not be equally good or bad. There should have been a central kind of government leadership and telling states this is our policy, and should have been done with consultation. BJP or Congress or communist, whoever rules the state, the virus is the same. So the central government should have taken the leadership and led the country against this. They are doing, but it's mostly of advisory role and some here and there some intervention.
Criticizing the national response, their leadership.
Maybe I may not be 100% correct because I live in another country. All my opinions and impressions are through the media that I watch and the conversation that I have with my colleagues and friends. I never got a feeling that India did as a single country to fight this disease.
Okay, now let's come to the World Health Organization. There's been a lot of ruckus. Question asked being, who is who working for? There's a lot of skepticism. They're accusing the World Health Organization of dancing to China's tunes. And let me read a couple of figures which I've collected. On January 10th, the World Health Organization put out they put out a tweet. The WHO does not recommend any specific health measures for travelers to and from Wuhan. And this was in spite of Taiwan's warnings. And they didn't recommend any trade or travel restrictions at all. And then January 20, this was even after the chief Chinese pulmonologist Zhong Nanshan had confirmed human-to-human transmissions, they downplayed risks of asymptomatic transmission. And then on January 30, when there was mounting pressure on declaring it as a pandemic, they declared it as a public health emergency. But then they, when countries like Australia and India put restrictions on travel to and from Wuhan, they criticized those actions. So all in all, and leaving aside, they glorified China when China didn't allow a WHO team to visit until mid-February. So there's a lot of skepticism that the World Health Organization is losing its accountability, its credibility. What would you say regarding that? You're a WHO person as well. So
tell me the name of a single person or a single country which did everything in the right way after this epidemic. Nobody's there.
No, but how can one wrong justify the other? When the WHO is supposed to be the
no, I'm not justifying. I don't have to justify. So I was a WHO staff in the past, working in, like you said, in India, East Timor. I was in Geneva with the Global Fund. So I'm still in the many committees of WHO. I don't have any intention or any interest to justify WHO. The thing is, people don't understand WHO and make comment. That's what I'm trying to say.
In what sense? Could you expand on that?
So yeah, I'll make it very clear. See, how does WHO is not a policing agency. WHO is a coordinating agency. They give advice based on the information they get. So in giving this information, different countries behave in different ways. Even India, I have seen situations where they don't send all the information at the right time, and those kind of things happen. So WHO says things based on evidence. For evidence, see, WHO doesn't have laboratories. They will not go to a field and test. Of course, they will support laboratory activities and things like that. So information has to come from countries. The way information, the level of information, the quantity of information that comes from different countries are at different levels. And WHO doesn't have any control on that. Some countries will not listen to WHO at all. Some countries will behave like their servants. So these kind of variations are there. So China will be behaving one way and Brazil will be behaving in another way. So you cannot, that's what I'm saying. WHO depends.
If China wasn't.
You are living in UK. If you are saying that you are saying that I know that there are 5 patients of a particular disease in your country, you may send that information. For WHO, they cannot consider that information at all. Maybe you are right, but it has to be UK government that should be officially sending that information.
Okay, but then if China wasn't being transparent and giving the sufficient information to the World Health Organization, why would Dr. Tedros openly call Xi Jinping a very transparent leader? Why would he openly praise him?
See, those are, I don't want to go into, there will be individual variation, whichever
But he's the
position somebody
chief of
spoke about.
World Health
See, as a WHO, that's what I'm trying to say. WHO as an organization, of course, the WHO as an organization will have some opinion on inferences, which the director may say. WHO can also go wrong. That's why, see, initially they did not know that. See, this information comes from evidence. This is a new disease. If it is about cholera or malaria, you don't have to wait. WHO will say this is the disease, this is the organism, this is how you have to prevent. This is a new disease. First of all, you have to get information, you have to prove it, and you have evidence. WHO cannot, transmit any information which is based on guess. So these things happen. These things happen.
If there's a lack of information, shouldn't it ask for it? Since the stakeholders are ultimately.
That's what I'm saying. I have worked in WHO. I have worked in Geneva also. It doesn't work that way. You have to, even for emergency information, even if you send 100 mails, people may not be responding in some countries. What can you do? You give money, Global Fund. I was a staff of Global Fund. Millions of dollars are sent to countries. The reporting, they really find it difficult to get all. Now things have been streamlined. So it is not that easy. Countries are sovereign countries. See, you start dealing with one country. I have experiences. Huge funding is transferred to one country, and the government change, and you look for the money. The leader of that country, I'm not saying the name of the country or leader, he had transferred all this money to his personal account, and he is in the prison. Who will you discuss with? So these are the, see, you don't think that countries are alike. Countries are wide variation. Some countries, they don't look at even WHO, whatever you see. So China has its own peculiarities. I'm not commenting China. China has their own, not in WHO alone. They have, whatever they do, they have their own practices. WHO cannot go beyond a particular level. And what I find is that they tried their level best. They got some information, and see, one country's leader may want WHO to say something. WHO cannot do that. Whether it is America or Maldives, the vote is one. There's one vote as a country.
There's one vote, but that's the point.
But there is financial influence and other things are there. That is behind.
That is influence.
That is there. That will be natural also. That's what I'm saying. So people will have their own reservations or their own biases. All these things will happen. But WHO as an organization, they try to, even if when they don't have information, they are silent. That's why people wanted them to declare it as a pandemic. There are certain rules. There are certain criteria to declare as something as a pandemic. You have to pay it. You cannot base take a decision based on some newspaper or television news. They have to get first. There are certain criteria. So that delay will be there. That's why, forget about WHO. Think about other UN organizations. There are a lot of wars happening. There are people with muscle power. They will go and attack other countries. What is UN doing? There are limitations. If UN could control all the countries, there will not be any war in this whole world. So that's what I'm trying to say. The systems are not that rigid like what we assume. It has its own advantages as well as disadvantages. Advantage is that if somebody goes wrong and it is rigid, they could ruin this entire system. So it's like a federal government. It consists of many countries. See, the same thing happens in a country also. The BJP government or whichever. Now the ruling party is BJP. A big state which is ruled by a BJP, they will have more power in the central government, vice versa. That's how things happen.
It's true, but if that happens, then the states or even the people can remove or vote against the supposed central government. But when it comes to
people not even realize that these things are being done. Somebody was saying that the people who are not hit by the train, who escape, they may also go back and vote the same party because they don't know who did it or who is the reason behind them. They were run over by train, somebody escaped. They don't know whose mistake was that. You go back to your village, some gods or some, what do you call it, a religious symbol is shown and they will go and vote for the same party. That's how things work in many countries, many states. Yeah.
Now, since you've told that the World Health Organization has limitations,
Yeah, of
then
course.
should companies should countries and people look up to them in the future?
See, that's what I'm
Would
saying.
they have an aversion?
You may have a failing government at central level. Suppose, will you go out of the country?
So
Or
you
state
won't.
can?
You'll
Yeah.
hopefully remove them
That,
the next
you have
election.
to accept it. You have to accept it. You have to raise your voice. You have to take measures. See, whether it is right or wrong, Trump is taking an action against WHO, which is against public health, which will not be useful for the global fund. Countries can take actions. Countries can raise their voice because even the director general is selected by countries. So if WHO goes wrong, countries have to come together and tell people, no, this is what we have to do because every country has a vote. WHO director general is elected by countries. Each country has a vote. But you cannot go out of the system. You see, blaming is easy. That's what I'm saying. You have you may have a very weak state, national government. Can the states go out? You have to work together. You have to help the state which is falling behind or
And
not
now,
working.
so what course of action can countries take if they have a problem with the World Health Organization?
First of all, see, it's not like that. It doesn't work that way. See, because you asked that question, I gave that example. The thing is, WHO does not have any police role or policing role
No, it's not.
with countries. And countries also have see, they have of course, they have country offices. They have limited. The thing is, see, most of the countries, all countries, basically all countries are represented in the WHO also. And WHO also has country offices. Country offices are dominated by country staff. I was a WHO country staff for 8-9 years. So I am a scientist or I am a doctor from my own country and I reach WHO. So I should be able to advise my government the best way possible. That's what I'm saying. So you don't have to always look at Geneva. Each country is different. See, that's what happened in the case of gloves also, mask also. WHO took time to advise masks for general population or even now.
They initially said that masks are not recommended.
Because WHO does not have evidence to say that mask will prevent COVID. You need evidence. There are examples of different levels of protection in other diseases. But
regarding
in a country where people don't go out, here it was not even lockdown in the US. It was stay at home. People are not going out. Why should we wear masks? When we go out for walk, you don't see anybody on the road. But in India or in our state, Kerala, people are on the road where you need to wear masks. So WHO, India, or experts in India should have advised the government to help, advise people to use masks. That's what we did, including myself. We are in committees. We advised the Chief Minister of Kerala. We advised the doctors in his committee, and they advised the Chief Minister to let people, to ask people to wear masks. That's your responsibility. You cannot look at Geneva for every answer. Geneva gives general guidelines. It could be done in a different way or modified way. You may not do it at all in your own country. That's what I'm saying.
But you would still say that there are problems with the World Health Organization.
If it is done by human beings, there will be problems. Even if it is done by computer, you have problems.
Yes, but like persistent problems. Would you say that it's a real problem?
See, it depends on how we perceive it also. See, if some country which is not using mask, they will say that the WHO advice in India is wrong because everyone is using mask. And it can be vice versa also. If some country is not using mask because the population behavior is different or people don't, India can say that the WHO, that's what I'm saying. So, but scientific fact, there are certain scientific facts which is applicable for everyone. India doesn't have a different virus or Brazil doesn't have a different virus. That WHO also says that this is evidence, this is a virus. There everyone has to agree. But other adaptations to the virus or the disease or the health system, WHO doesn't have much control. How can you say that? How can WHO say that India should buy another 10,000?
No, that's not the. No, I'm not talking about individual national.
That's also fact. That's also fact. India should have more ventilators in preparation. But can WHO dictate the central government say that you should WHO India may advise, which consists of Indians. They can say we need this much of ventilators.
True. But then it's just not COVID. Even for Ebola, the criticism was the same, that there were 2 lakhs.
See, criticism, it's easy for to criticize. It's very difficult to do things. So that's how I look at it. When somebody does, there is no perfect way of doing. That's why I asked.
What are they doing?
First question. Tell me a person or an expert or a country which did everything in the best possible way. There is nothing. Everyone was.
But what is the World Health Organization doing to counter
That's
these?
what I'm saying. If why wars are happening when there is UN? We had all good secretaries. Yeah. Why there are fights between states? There is fight between Kerala and Tamil Nadu regarding this Mullaperiyar. There is fight between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu because of Kaveri. Why this is happening when there's a central government? Why should this happen? The central government has powers. It's not an external body. WHO is an external body for every country, except their country offices. Geneva WHO is an external body. It's an advisory body. They don't have any power, and they need WHO Director General needs a visa from India to come visit India or any other country. Maybe exempt, I don't know. But he cannot just visit like that. But our Prime Minister can come to Kanyakumari and take next flight to Kashmir. He doesn't have any. He doesn't need any. Then why this? There are fights between states.
I believe you're digressing a bit. And we can point out faults in every.
That's what I'm saying. If you divert your questions, answers will also have
diversion. This was regarding the World Health Organization.
That's what I'm saying. See, you should have comparison. Why do you want to isolate WHO? It's like I'm telling some things went wrong in UK. Why is it going wrong? Because it is UK. Certain things will be right and certain things will be wrong.
But then one wrong should never justify the other.
WHO has its own weaknesses as well as strengths. WHO has its own strengths as well as weaknesses.
Yes, and this time the citizens are the nations. So the nation. This time, as you drew an analogy between the governments in India and say the World Health Organization, this time the citizens are the countries, and if they,
that's what I'm saying.
If they are
in your country you have more control. Still things go in the wrong way.
That's true.
So like that, yeah. So had it been a different organization, if WHO was, it's not possible, but theoretically things like that. WHO has decision-making power in every country. WHO is ruling the world in terms of health. Things would have been different, which will never happen. If something going wrong, WHO can, the director of who is appointed, his representative can take a flight to China and decide things. Things would have been 100% different.
So what's your opinion on Dr. Tedros, the MD of the
I cannot make any opinion on any personal thing. We know each other, and currently I don't work for WHO. I don't have any. I should not make any personal comments about anyone in this kind of interview. And he is a great person. That's why people elected him. If countries feel that he's not good for them,
there was a lot of Chinese influence in bringing Dr. Tedros, because China has a lot of investments in Ethiopia.
So when you say that Chinese interest is there, which means that there was somebody who did not have interest also. So these are polarizations. When you have interest in something else, somebody else, you can say that. So it's just like that.
Fine. So you can't really call it a black and white issue. It's gray. It's complex.
You can.
Multi-dimensional kind of a problem.
See, you cannot have a global. Of course, we are all global. I think about myself as a global citizen, but you cannot have a real global citizen to become a WHO Director General. Not belonging to any country or any region or any color, or you cannot get a person dropped from the sky to become WHO Director General. Naturally, there will be influence on him and influence within him. That will be there. But I don't think he did a bad job or anything like that. Being very honest, I'm not a WHO, so I don't have any reservations in criticizing if somebody has done wrong.
Even his comments that Xi Jinping is an example of a transparent leader. You have no problems with that?
See, I'm not making any comments about a particular person. So far, in our at least 1 hour we discussed, I didn't make any personal comments about any person, because you are repeatedly asking about WHO. That's what I'm saying. I cannot say. I don't have that power, or I don't have that position also to say whether he's a good person or bad person. It is the countries to it's for the countries to decide. they
If the
yeah,
countries decide to reduce their funding, would that be all right?
what?
If the
US.
countries decide to reduce their funding
So
to the World
that's a
Health
different
Organization?
question altogether. See, when one country reduces its funding, it's not going to affect TEDros or it's not going to affect WHO. It's going to affect the entire world.
That's true.
I have worked in a small country, East Timor. That time it was the least developed country, and it had very few embassies. And US embassy was a prominent embassy there, and there was a lot of money. Even I tapped USAID funding for Timorese people to treat their HIV or TB, whatever. So and if they have TB, or see, TB is airborne. So you cannot restrict a disease, airborne disease, by borders. So if some country has TB, you see the person sitting on the other end of the world also will get TB. So you cannot stop any disease in a particular country. Ultimately, even the Americans who get TB is from Asians or Africans or Eastern European TB patients who are not treated properly. So these diseases, by reducing it's like shooting your own leg. So diseases, especially infectious diseases, you cannot limit them by using geographical borders. So if somebody is cutting funding for WHO, some poor countries will be badly affected, and these diseases will ultimately come back to your own state, your own country. Yeah, so cutting funding is shooting your own leg.
Shooting your own leg. It's a nice analogy. Okay, so let's talk about your, as we end the interview, let's talk about your personal journey. Choosing a career in public health, in a country that's obsessed with specializations like ortho, radiology. How would you describe your journey till now?
That depends on your personality. So, Jesus, if he was sent to medical school, he would have become the worst doctor against his wishes, like that. So you have, but many children are not lucky. Jesus was lucky. So many, but I wanted to do medicine. That was my choice. But after joining medicine, I realized that I'm fit for something else, like public health, where I don't have to sit the whole day in a clinic in the middle of patients and equipment, which I enjoyed for almost 10 years, close to 10 years. But during that time also, I realized that
So you spent 10 years after your
almost
MBBS?
10 years, different practices and post-graduations and all those things. I spent 10 years, almost 10 years before joining WHO. I finished my medicine in 1990, 89, 90, and I joined WHO in 99. Almost 10 years I spent working. I tasted different things. I worked from psychiatry to neurosurgery to surgery.
Oh, that's very interesting.
To private clinic, ESI clinic, medical college, and postgraduate training, my own clinic, drug de-addiction, treating the drug addicts in prisons and mental asylums. I tried different kinds of things. And I wanted to do that because all these facilities or institutions were in my own.
So would you call that exploring yourself?
I was exploring. I did not have this MPH course, Master of Public Health course in India, and I did not have the social circumstances to move to another, go to another country and come back, study and come back, because I didn't have the social support, as well as, of course, I didn't have that kind of money to go abroad, and I didn't want to live outside. I wanted to do some Master of Public Health and come back to India, but I didn't have that money, and we did not have a PhD course in India. I wanted to do Master of Public Health.
So back then there was no MPH course in India?
No, the first MPH course in the whole country started in my city. I was so lucky. In Sri Chitra Institute, the first MPH course in all of the country is started in Sri Chitra Institute, which was just 3 miles from my home. I was very lucky. I was in the first batch itself, and all my teachers, majority of my teachers were from US and UK, and not the countries, but the very popular institute, Harvard and Hopkins. So and of course, Indian teachers were also there. So we got a mix of real global kind of course education. So I did that master's in 97, after 7 years of finishing my MBBS. So 97, 98. Then 98 I finished, and 99 I got into a WHO job, which was the first time the WHO was recruiting field level medical officers or field level consultants for supporting national TB control program. That was the first recruitment. So in the first batch, they took 16 people. I got into that. I was given charge of Kerala and South Tamil Nadu and Lakshadweep. And so I was only one person to get posting in my own, your own state. But they tried to put you in different states. But among the 60, nobody could speak Malayalam and I could not speak any other language. So in my case, there was no other choice. So I had to look after South Tamil Nadu. And after 4 years, there was a position of National Professional Officer to look at the
New
public,
Delhi, with the New Delhi base, right?
to look at the in charge of public-private partnerships. So
Okay.
I got selected that position. I had an advantage because I did some pilot projects and experiment of engaging private sector in Kerala, which came to my advantage, and I got that position. So I spent some 4 years in Delhi. By that time, there was a position in East Timor as an international officer. I got selected. I worked there for almost 2 years. Then there was an opening in Geneva. I applied for that. I got selected. And I spent some 5 years in Geneva as a diplomat there. Then there was an opening of one global director position with an organization called PATH in Washington, D.C. So I resigned from global. I resign. I take risk. I don't enjoy working for an organization for more than 4 to 5 years. I get bored, really bored. And the other thing is, when I move, somebody else can come. And everywhere I, mentor people and I bring many people, somebody can take over my position, I move. So it's a build, operate, and
always heading on to the next opportunity.
Yeah, because there is only one life and you have to understand different things. Now, after doing all these things, now I'm going back to Kerala. I cannot contribute a lot. I cannot promise a lot for my country or anything. But I can say something with full conviction that I've been transformed. I am a better lad compared to what I was when I left Kerala or left India. I've improved a lot. So I'm coming back with better skills and better knowledge. So they will find a
breath of fresh air, because usually politicians talk about changing the country or changing the city. Now you're talking about changing yourself, that you've changed.
Yeah, I have changed a lot, and I have even my understanding about Kerala and India has changed. That's how I look at it. So when I lived in Trivandrum, I thought the entire world is revolving around Trivandrum. The moon is revolving around Trivandrum. And all people are looking at Trivandrum. When I moved to Delhi, I realized that people in the minds of many North Indians, they don't have even a mental picture of where Kerala is. Forget about mental picture. Some people don't know that there is a state like Kerala. Even today, I wrote a Facebook article about such things. So, and when you come to another East Timor, a country like East Timor, they don't know Kerala. They know something about India, and their entire impression about India is through Shah Rukh Khan. They know Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh. Some people, older people don't know Amitabh Bachchan. They see India through those dances. The first day itself, people ask me whether I can dance like Shah Rukh Khan.
That's what they see through the window.
The way people conceive things are different. They asked me if I know Shah Rukh Khan. I said no. They were looking at me, what happened to this guy? Because even my WHO driver, he used to talk to the Prime Minister of that country, or President of that country. It's a small country, 60,000 population. My driver used to stop my car and used to go and chat with the Prime Minister of the country. That's how they have only 1 million population.
When I say that demography is different.
They thought that when I came from India, they thought that I am the best doctor from India who is coming to support their country. And I'm saying that I don't know Shah Rukh Khan. They looked at me, what's happening? So the perception about your country also changes. No?
Perception, your perspective changes.
Perspective about your country also changes. And you go to Switzerland, things are entirely different. I was in a developing world, India, where things are different. I went to the least developed country, East Timor, where you don't have even a movie theater in that city, no good hospitals. And you go to Switzerland, I saw an accident in front of me. I was working with another friend of mine who has been living in Switzerland. I saw an accident. I was about to go and help. He said, stop me. No. Don't go and touch. The ambulance will come. They will take care of. And I waited there. Ambulance came. He had a fall. Nothing happened. But ambulance came, stretcher came, police came. They transported him as if he had a spinal injury. He was smiling. That's how they transport a person with suspected head injury or spinal injury. In our country, we stop the first auto rickshaw, fold the person into 3 and put inside the auto rickshaw and send the driver to the hospital. And because of that, he would have sustained a worse injury and he would have become paralyzed for his entire life. So things are different. In India, if you wait in front of a gun hospital, the casualty doctor is not there opening the door. You start banging on the door. I have seen that when I worked in the casualty. The big leader was banging on the door because we were operating on somebody else, casualty theater. That's in Switzerland. I had to sit with my son for 5 hours, 6 hours a week. Yeah,
That's a kind of
I thought
the
we had a
difference is in
suspected
discipline. So that's the kind of discipline that's there.
Yeah, I know, not discipline. The way things work are different. I thought my son fractured his ankle. I'm a doctor. I thought there's a fracture. And ultimately, there was no fracture. But you cannot say just like that. In doctor, you have to take X-ray and all those things. You have to wait for 5 hours, 6 hours in front of that hospital because they had other emergencies. So your perspective, the way you look at your own people or your own country, as a doctor myself, I have transformed. That's what I told about transformation.
Okay. So we've reached the end of our interview. Thank you for sharing your perspective, Dr. Lal.
Yeah, thank you for asking good question. It was stimulating my thoughts. So it was, so certain questions I also felt they are really good questions and challenging questions. And I tried to answer to the best of my capacity, best of my understanding.
And I wish you the best of luck for your political career.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you all the best for your career also. This is a good career. I had done this kind of TV work. I did the first Indian health show as a doctor.
Oh, is that so?
So I was the first Indian doctor to run a regular TV show. That was in Asianet. The Asianet was one of the first 2 channels. Asianet and Z almost started at the same time, 93. So I did a weekly health show called Pulse. Your parents may know about it. I did some 11 years, 500 episodes, weekly episodes.
Oh, that's nice. I'll definitely check it out if it's there.
Yeah, it was called, those days there was no YouTube. So they have, the studio has all the records, but YouTube, But when I go back, they start interviewing me, some of my interviews. The Pulse program, the same program interview me after 11 years. Maybe you can find in the YouTube. Otherwise, That's why,
Okay, so I hope you guys liked this interview. If you liked it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.